Next on Currents News, the fierce storm that whipped the city, forcing a church to call out for help.
An explosion of shattered glass and damaged pews at this Queens church after Tropical Storm Isaias tore through New York City. Now the pastor is calling on his parishioners for help. I'm Jessica Easthope, and that's ahead.
The people of Beirut are demanding answers on why their city blew up, and an army of volunteers is stepping up to help the recovery. The COVID crisis is hitting everyone in the wallet, especially at the grocery store. Silver linings to this pandemic? You might not believe it, but there are. And pack your bags. The virtual trip to Italy continues tonight.
Join me on the same pilgrimage the early Christians made when coming to Rome. It all starts by going through this arch into Piazza del Popolo. Coming up.
The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. A lot of people are still in the dark tonight and might not have lights until Sunday. They're powerless because of that fierce tropical storm whose winds caused so much damage throughout the region. Really hit hard Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal Church in Queens, and the pastor is calling for help. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the story from Ridgewood.
Flying into the church, crashed to the floor.
Only one person was inside Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal in Ridgewood, Queens, when it happened. A priest celebrating Mass alone witnessed the explosion of glass as the powerful winds brought in by Tropical Storm Isaias blew out a 12-foot stained glass window. The window, nearly a century old, flew from its frame and crashed onto the pews, damaging 8 of them. Shards of glass were left scattered across the sanctuary.
The storm was raging. The winds were so strong.
Father Anthony Sansone, the pastor of Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, says he was horrified at the damage left behind by the storm. He expects the repairs to cost around $80,000.
We have to try to restore this window. We have to fix benches, repainting where the damage on the walls was created as a result of not only the window but the rain that came in.
But he's confident the community will show up for the church like it's always done. Parishioners helped pay for a $150,000 renovation to the church completed in 2018. Now, as they're finally returning to Mass, they say this is another test of their faith.
This is our place. This is where we come just to say a prayer and for Mass, and it's very important to us to be here and to make sure that we can be here.
This is the people that come to this church. I think it's just a matter of everybody wanting to support what their home is.
Was it just shattered?
Father Anthony says his parishioners' financial support has helped sustain the church.
I am confident that this will be done. Parishioners are very supportive. The response of the community is so positive.
Though the now predominantly Polish and Italian neighborhood has changed over the years, what remains is faith and the people's love for their church.
This is who we are. This is who I think everybody is. When it comes down to your faith, you come up to it.
Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal has been closed for the last few days, but will be open once again Thursday night for Mass for the feast day of the Transfiguration of the Lord. In Ridgewood, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
To help Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal replace the window and repair the damages done by the storm, you can donate on givecentral.org/OLMM-Queens. We'll repeat that address again at the end of the newscast. Tonight, Beirut, Lebanon is awash in fury and funerals as the extent of Tuesday's massive explosion is coming into sharper focus. Miles of debris are covering the area around the epicenter of the blast at the port of Beirut. The official death toll is at 137, but likely to go much higher as rescuers dig through the rubble. More than 5,000 are reported injured. Much of Beirut is in an uproar over the apparent cause of the disaster. Nearly 3,000 tons of high explosives left to rot for years in a warehouse at the port. The lives of Beirut survivors are in chaos. Homes of many are now demolished. Still, an army of volunteers is launching a massive cleanup effort. Ben Wiedemann is in Beirut with the latest.
George Faroun has come with a friend to see what they can salvage from the remains of his parents' apartment, which looked directly onto Beirut's port. Tuesday's blast turned it into a moonscape, a panorama of utter destruction. Dried blood marks the spot where his mother was resting in bed when the explosion sent a wall slamming on top of her. She's still in hospital. This was his parents' retirement home.
This is their life, everything they did here. Look what happened.
Given the damage, they probably will never be able to move back. Many neighbors were badly injured, others killed. In addition to the dead and the wounded, many people have lost their homes. According to the governor of Beirut, more than 300,000 people in the city have been made homeless. People are packing up and moving out. While others try to salvage what they can, the area near the port is now a hive of activity as an army of volunteers like Maggie Demirjian has launched into a massive cleanup effort. Perhaps to show themselves that despite this country's mountain of woes, good will prevail.
Lebanese people doesn't deserve this. Yeah, we are good people.
They've come from all over the city, handing out food and water, pitching in wherever, however they can. Officials believe the blast emanated from a warehouse filled with 2,750 metric tons of ammonium nitrate, sitting there under lax security for 6 years. The government has promised a quick, transparent investigation. Yet going back decades, Lebanon has witnessed a series of high-profile assassinations, and rarely, if ever, has the truth emerged.
This accident here, this crisis, for 20 years going to talk about. The investigation is never going to end. No conclusion, no results.
And no confidence among many here that the truth will ever be known. Ben Wiedemann, Beirut.
With so many homes destroyed, people are sleeping on the streets of Beirut. The priests of the city's Franciscan community are offering emergency assistance.
Entire families have been forced to sleep in the streets because their houses have been completely destroyed. We used to distribute food packages and hygiene supplies against the coronavirus. Now, however, our doors are open to help those affected by this tragedy.
The priests are coming to the rescue even though the Franciscan church and the adjoining convent of St. Joseph were heavily damaged in the blast. They're also asking for prayers and contributions to rebuild the city and not abandon the people. There are several ways you can help. Caritas is the umbrella organization for several Catholic charities. You can make a donation at caritas.org. Aid to the Church in Need is a papal foundation. Contributions are being accepted at churchinneed.org, and the Vatican Agency, the Catholic Near East Welfare Association's website, cnewa.org, is another place where you can make a contribution. We'll repeat this information again at the end of the newscast. In the United States, a mixed picture about Americans losing their jobs. Weekly unemployment claims reported today are down, but still top the 1 million mark. It's the 20th week in a row over 1 million. The number of people filing for the first time stood at 1.2 million. That's a decrease from the week before. Still, millions of Americans remain out of work as the U.S. labor market is getting crushed by the coronavirus pandemic. With or without a job, the COVID crisis is hurting everyone's wallet, especially when it's time to go shopping at the grocery store. John Lawrence has the story.
Some Americans struggle to get food on the table, especially since the $600 federal boost for unemployment benefits expired.
It's a lot harder to be able to afford fresh fruits and vegetables, the meats and the milk.
Financial insecurities have resulted in long lines at food banks and pantries in many areas.
People don't realize just how important stuff like this is.
And the number of known COVID-19 cases in the U.S. isn't the only thing on the rise. So is the cost of many items at the grocery store. The Bureau of Economic Analysis says the price tag for beef, eggs, poultry, and pork have all gone up. Analysts say some are eating fewer and smaller meals, which could have a ripple effect.
If kids aren't eating well now, they don't grow up to be as healthy. They don't do as well in school, and that has impacts further down the line. They don't make as much as adults.
Talks about another stimulus between top Democratic and White House negotiators are still in a stalemate, but both sides have agreed to reach a deal by the end of the week. And if that deadline isn't met, President Trump may get involved.
By Friday, if we haven't made significant progress and we're just too far apart, the president is prepared to take executive action.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
A somber remembrance this morning in Hiroshima, 75 years after the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city. A schoolgirl struck the city's peace bell as part of memorial services, which were scaled back this year because of the coronavirus. Hiroshima survivors and relatives gathered to honor those killed and to pray for peace. The bomb and another dropped on Nagasaki 3 days later led to Japan's surrender and the end of World War II. Pope Francis visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki in November, his last trip before the pandemic. Today, in a message to the Hiroshima Memorial's organizers, he repeated his argument that the mere possession of nuclear weapons is immoral. When he went to Japan, the Holy Father prayed at the peace memorials in both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now he's saying that for peace to flourish, all people need to lay down the weapons of war. Pope Francis is naming 6 women to senior jobs at the Vatican. They will be part of the 15-member Council for the Economy. That's the body that oversees Vatican finances. The appointments make them the most senior female officials ever to serve at the Vatican. This is seen as the biggest step so far by the Holy Father to carry out his promise to place more women in church leadership roles. There's a lot more news headed your way. History may look back on the coronavirus pandemic and point to discoveries that changed the world. We'll tell you about some of them. We'll go inside a school now reopened and find out what changes are happening for the kids. And later in the newscast, a trip to the Eternal City to learn why a queen gave up her crown.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
President Trump is saying today that a coronavirus vaccine might arrive in the U.S. before Election Day. Trump, who is seeking re-election on November 3rd, believes having the medicine could be possible even before then, at least in some cases. The president's comments differ from his own top health officials. Dr. Anthony Fauci has said a safe and effective vaccine won't be available until the end of the year or early 2021. Years from now, when we talk about the miserable memories of living through a global pandemic, it might be worth remembering that many tragic events have unexpected silver linings that outlast the original trauma and end up benefiting the world for generations to come. COVID-19 has wrecked lives and devastated the economy, but it's also given birth to some amazing innovations, a cleaner environment, and a more family-friendly work-life balance. In the medical field, therapeutics and ongoing advances in testing have slashed the death rate from just months ago, the pandemic even forcing a reimagining of the routine doctor's visit.
We're going to take the lessons from this pandemic and use them to create new healthcare going forward.
Part of that forward momentum is the growth of telemedicine, where doctors can see patients remotely using HIPAA-compliant video conferencing tools.
What led to the adoption was not only that necessity is the mother of invention and that we needed to do this, but there was a lot of regulatory changes from the government and different health departments, which allowed us to really move on telehealth full steam ahead.
Hallie Swibel says telemedicine forces doctors to be more creative when face-to-face office visits are impossible. That kind of innovation technology has some businesses booming, especially as tech companies step in to tailor to the needs of a work-from-home workforce.
We've seen companies utilize technologies that for many years have been nice to haves and have now become must-haves.
Like telemedicine, remote communication platforms are changing the way we work and socialize, something NYU's Craig Wilson thinks is here to stay.
Zoom has basically become a verb in the way that Google has become a verb.
Technology has even kept the faithful connected to their parishes as churches around the diocese continue to stream church services and utilize the power of social media. Even donating to the weekly collection plate can be done remotely, and while money is tight for many, you might be able to save on rent by buying a new home or refinancing an existing mortgage because interest rates have plummeted.
New and fresh can be interest rates at all-time lows right now. Your refinance rate, so long as it's more than 1% lower than what your original APR or rate is, or interest rate is right now.
And if you have a little extra, financial experts say now is the time to invest.
It's a area of interest that you're looking at, homes, stocks, bonds, whatever, go for it. Don't be afraid. This is not the time to be timid, and just go after what you're interested in.
Other leaps forward are more nuanced, like implementing the lessons learned from weaknesses in our global supply chain or fixing the flaws in our government's preparedness plans. Key improvements that will help avert another potential disaster like a future coronavirus. Now to an update tonight on a major fundraising effort taken up during the pandemic by a Queens priest. Father Christopher Henue has raised over $20,000 and biked 100 miles. Also, his parish of Holy Child Jesus in Richmond Hill can continue to help families struggling during the coronavirus crisis. The money from the 100 Miles of Hope ride is going to the church's food pantry. The ride took a little less than 8 hours to complete. The back-to-class debate continues in New York tonight, but in other states, schools are already in session. One in Minnesota is giving us an inside look into what in-person classes look like. Students at Sumner Elementary are only mask-free during recess. Once that bell rings, they line up 6 feet apart, sanitize their hands, wear a mask, and walk inside. Their desks are separated 6 feet apart with classrooms at 50% capacity. Principal Sheila Berger explains why she feels remote learning isn't good for her students.
We really felt strongly that it was important to get back in school, start working with kids and help them gain more language skills. As a leader and as a staff, we set the tone of the building. So if we're exhibiting signs of high anxiety, that will rub off.
Sumner Elementary is operating on a modified school schedule. Students return for 45 days, then take a 3-week break. Still to come on Currents News, a visit to the People's Square in the Eternal City and how a 17th century pope won a big victory there. Snow falls inside Mary's Basilica to remember a miraculous summer from long ago. Americans are still banned from traveling to Italy because of the coronavirus, so we're continuing our very own virtual tour of some of Rome's most popular destinations. Right now, Vatican reporter Melissa Butts is taking us to the People's Square, just inside Rome's northern gate, a first stop for early Christian pilgrims on their own journey to the Eternal City.
Welcome to Piazza del Popolo, one of Rome's biggest squares, now known for hosting concerts and political manifestations. But from the Middle Ages on, this square was the very first place that Christian pilgrims saw upon entering Rome. It was through this grand doorway that the early Christians fulfilled their dream of coming to the Eternal City. One of the most famous pilgrims who came was Queen Christina of Sweden, a 17th century royal who created a scandal when she abdicated her throne and converted to Catholicism. To prepare for her visit, Roman expert Livia Galante explains that the arch was actually completely redone for her visit by Pope Alexander VII, who baptized her into the Catholic faith.
This was a big victory for the papacy, so she was welcomed with all the possible honors, and Gian Lorenzo Bernini was requested to refurbish the arch in order to welcome the Queen in the most grand style.
Upon their arrival, early pilgrims like Queen Christina stopped at the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo. It was built by Pope Paschal II in 1099 and expanded by Sixtus IV in the 15th century. It's where believers thanked the Blessed Mother for their safe travels.
Most venerated image of Our Lady is above the main altar, is one of the most venerated icons of Rome, the Madonna del Popolo, and it is this image that pilgrims revered after their pilgrimage, after they arrived in the Eternal City on the footsteps of the saints and the martyrs.
Once in the square, the obelisk now stands as the centerpiece. It was transferred from Circus Maximus in 1589.
From there, in the 1580s, a pope named Sixtus V moved the obelisk to decorate the square that welcomed the pilgrims.
The towering pillar witnessed the persecution of Christians in Circus Maximus, to only later embrace the city's newcomers, who were exhausted from their journey to the Eternal City.
Throughout the centuries, Piazza del Popolo has seen dramatic changes and additions, but the one element that has remained untouched since the 15th century is its namesake, the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo, the original welcoming site for Christian pilgrims. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Santa Maria del Popolo is the grandest of three churches that adorn the People's Square. We'll bring you more stops on our tour of the Eternal City in the coming weeks. Don't miss it. Another beautiful sight in Rome, the miracle of Our Lady of the Snows, remembered at the place where there was snow in summer. White flower petals fell from the ceiling of the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome yesterday to recall what happened centuries ago. The Blessed Mother appeared to Pope Liberius in a dream in the year 358. She asked him to build a church in her honor on the spot where there would be a snowfall in summertime. That location is now the Basilica. Mass was held there to mark the miracle.
Well, I came because it's the day of Our Lady of the Snows. Since my name is Blanca, which means white, it's my name day. I was excited to celebrate it at this Mass. We're devoted because we're Romans, because we cherish the Madonna that Pius XII called Salus Populi Romani, savior of the Roman people. She's the protector of Rome, and this celebration is fundamental.
Pope Francis visited the Basilica's image of Mary in March to pray for an end to the coronavirus crisis. And that is Currents News. Currents News Special Edition, anchored by Michelle Powers, will air tomorrow at 7 p.m. and this weekend starting Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Several rebroadcasts will follow, including on Sunday. Go to netny.tv for the complete schedule. And before we go, here again is where you can make a donation to help the people of Lebanon. Caritas.org, churchinneed.org, and cnewa.org. And to help Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal repair the church, go to givecentral.org/OLMM-Queens. I'm Emily Druby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. We leave you with the inspiring moment in Beirut when 79-year-old Christian grandmother May Aboud Melki sat down at her beloved piano despite all the rubble around her.